So you have your construction business and you're an S corp, and that's great. Your CPA, your attorney, whoever you spoke to, told you to become an S corp, and that's tax efficient, self-employment tax wise. But you want to take things now to the next level. You're growing, you're scaling, you're adding crews, you're adding job sites, you're adding even maybe a new arm to your business, or you want to protect maybe your trucks, your equipment, everything that you're paying like so much for every month. So how do we go about doing this and not complicating our lives, keeping things streamlined, and while we protect each segment of our business? That's exactly what we're going to go over today. So when your construction business grows, as you can imagine, your risk grows too. I mean, you can have multiple job sites, someone slips and falls on one, machinery, gets damaged or breaks on the other. You don't want to mix up all this risk. You don't want one mess up to sacrifice everything you've worked so hard for. But also, you don't want to complicate your life either. So how do we go about achieving this outcome? One way to do it is to set up multiple corporations or LLCs, and a lot of people go about it like that. The problem with that is you have more tax returns to file, more accounting to do, and it just becomes a giant administrative headache. Now, where do you find that perfect middle ground? There's something that's called a QSub, and what this is a subsidiary S corporation. It's owned entirely by your actual S corporation. However, legally speaking, it becomes its own separate entity. The QSub can own property, hire its own employees, open its own bank account, and even get sued separately. Not that that's what we're going for, but it definitely is a perk. But this is where the magic comes in. For tax purposes, the IRS treats it as being one and the same with your original S corporation. You don't have to file a second tax return. There's no double accounting and no complex consolidations. You still file one Form 1120S just like before. So that's the beauty of this. It gives you risk protection without the tax complexity. You can even have multiple QSubs, each handling its own line of business or project risk. For example, you can have the main construction company, the parent S Corp, a QSub for equipment rentals, and a QSub for property development. And at the end of the day, only file one tax return, one set of K1s for all the shareholders reported in all the same way. Nothing changes from a tax end. Now, what are typical examples that one might see in the construction space with respect to QSubs? And I'm going to put these down here to the bottom left. So each new job site that carries a high liability, you can certainly, if you have one large development project that's coming along and you think it carries its own set of risks and you don't want to mix it up with the rest of your business, you can just create a QSub. We put it under your regular S corp, and everything goes under that. Everything related to that development project goes under that QSub. So that way you separate the risk for that one project that way. Each business line, concrete, plumbing, electrical, if you have these multiple business lines under your business, you can separate it out. Holding company for vehicles or heavy equipment. Sometimes you purchase your equipment, you finance it, and you don't want a lawsuit to come and sweep everything you've worked so hard, saved so hard for. So you could even set up a separate entity, where all of your heavy machinery and equipment, your fixed assets, everything is housed to protect all those equipment from anybody that might be coming after you. Real estate development projects, again, a separate project. This is very common to set up a QSub in this way. You're expanding geographically and want local control with centralized taxes. Again, if you're expanding into different markets, maybe you feel more comfortable having one QSub in each locality. You can transfer money between the parent and the QSubs all day long, and there's no tax implications whatsoever. In the view of the IRS, you're regarded still as one single entity. Setting up a QSub is simpler than you think. It's just a matter of setting up your entity, then filing a Form 8869 with the IRS. And upon approval, it can have its own EIN, its own payroll, its own contract, its own bank account. It can effectively operate as a completely separate legal entity. However, for, again, accounting-wise, tax purpose-wise, everything is rolled up into one entity. So it has all the legal protections, and it doesn't have that complexity that comes with setting up other legal entities tax-wise. Now, this isn't for everyone. If you're a solo contractor with, say, 1 or 2 crew members, this might be overkill. But if you're scaling your business, you're in growth mode, adding new business lines, buying new property, doing rentals, it may be time to consider having a QSub or two. And there you have it. That's today's episode, a QSub, owned 100% by your already currently existing S Corp. Separate legal entity, one tax return, separate liability, move assets tax-free. It doesn't get better than that. That's like, growing your business is one thing. That's definitely, a very important part of the equation. But the other piece of the equation is asset protection. It's also protecting what you've worked so hard to build. Because there are people out there, especially a lot of lawyers, who will, once they see that you have money, they will try to cause every problem under the sun to come after it and pirate that money. So it's not just important that you build wealth, create wealth, it's also important that you protect that wealth one way or another. And this is one of those many strategies that doesn't complicate your tax life, but protects those assets all the better. So I hope you found this helpful. If you did, click like, subscribe, turn on notifications for any updates, and I hope to see you in the next one.